Week 6 is here, and Tanner has two bets for the people. We'll also talk DraftKings Player of the Slate, stock up, stock down, and a prop that you do not want to miss. Let's jump in.
The time is now for the Dr. Bob Sports Podcast. I am Tanner. I am our head of analytics, and I am in my 9th year working alongside Bob, originating our NFL and college basketball bets. And today, as always, I'm joined by our digital media specialist, Grant. Your Chiefs dropped another game last week. Are you going to be at Arrowhead this Sunday night to see them try to get back to 500?
Oh, I'm going to be there, and I'm going to get us to 500. We're going to get the boys sailing in the right direction again.
Well, we will not be talking about that game today, but we will have a bet on it, which you can get at drbobsports.com.
All right, well, let's jump into our first segment here, and that is going to be one of our Monday night games because our primetime preview is also our free bet of the week, and you are 24-15-1 on podcast sides and totals dating back to 2023, but where are we going with this one?
We're going to take the under in the Buffalo-Atlanta game. So this moved up on an Adam Chernoff release on Tuesday that I disagree with. Basically, Adam and others are convinced this is a great bounce-back spot for the Bills offense after a season-low 20 points last week. But defensive-minded head coach Sean McDermott has historically gotten more conservative off of a loss, and the Bills are actually 9-19 to the over. So they played way under off of a loss since 2019. And they actually are 17-10-1 against the spread in those games. So they do well off of a loss, but they don't really air it out like some people seem to think. And this is a favorable matchup for Sean McDermott's cover 3 defense because most of those shot concepts that Falcons offensive coordinator Zach Robinson likes to use, which are, those posts or deep crossers, are taken care of by the free safety in cover 3. Atlanta's yards per pass play against cover 3 is a league low 70% of their yards per pass play against all other coverages. So I think Atlanta tries to control this game on the ground, right? Milking the clock, shortening the game as an underdog here. The Bills defense is 28th in EPA per rush allowed.
Well, how do you think this Falcons defense is going to match up with Buffalo's offense?
I mean, the Bills, they had some success on play action last Sunday night, but the Falcons have been pretty solid against play action so far. And another thing that Bills like to do is use pre-snap motion to identify coverage, but the Falcons have done a great job disguising coverage this season, and their yards per pass play allowed versus motion is just 85% of their yards per pass play against no motion. So they're actually better against motion, which is kind of rare. They're second best in the NFL relatively there.
Yeah, and to add to that, the Falcons will likely have top cornerback A.J. Terrell back on the field this week after coming off the bye, and his backup, D. Alford, has 3 penalties and just 78 coverage snaps, and A.J. Terrell had 2 penalties and 671 coverage snaps last year.
Yep. So that's going to be an upgrade for the Falcons there. Our model favors the Bills by 5.9 with a predicted total of 46.1 points.
All right, well, let's shift over to our next segment here. We've got stock up, stock down, and whose stock are you buying this week?
I'm buying New England's offense. This is one where I agree with Adam Chernoff, by the way. And Adam, bring back the Simple Handicap podcast. We all miss it.
100%. We need that back.
So Patriots offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels has been doing a great job with Drake May so far. Drake May's 6th in EPA per play this season, and McDaniels' entire system is built to sustain drives and punish the soft spacing we see with Brandon Staley's 2 high structures. New England's offense spent only 38% of its snaps in 11 personnel last week. They're up to the 3rd highest heavy personnel rate in the NFL by our metrics, and the New Orleans defense is surrendering 20% more yard per pass play versus 2 wide receiver sets than lighter personnel. That's 25th relatively in the league.
Yeah, and the Saints will need to play even more 2 high shells this week because they won't be able to trust their safeties. I mean, you have starting safety Justin Reed suffered a concussion early in the last game, and their other starting safety, Julian Blackman, has already been sidelined.
Yeah, it's Hunter Henry's 2nd in EPA per target among tight ends. He's going to have a favorable matchup across from 2 backup safeties there. And then Stephon Diggs, 146 receiving yards last week in that return to Buffalo. And he's going to get another, nice matchup to keep it going this week across from backup rookie 4th round cornerback Quincy Riley with starter Isaac Yiadom out.
Yeah, that was an awesome revenge game by him. But who else are you going to be buying this week?
I'm going to buy Chicago's defense. So they're 19th in EPA per play allowed so far, but they're going to get better, likely returning 3 starters coming off the bye in TJ Edwards, Grady Jarrett, and nickelback Kyler Gordon.
And Bears backup nickelback Nick McLeod was surrendering 0.39 more yards per cover snap in the slot than Gordon did all of last season.
Yeah, so that's going to be an improvement there in coverage. And I like the schematic matchup for Dennis Allen this Sunday against Cliff Kingsbury's static leverage-based air raid, because Allen's pattern matching rules basically erase all the bread and butter route concepts that Kingsbury likes to use, and that staticness of the offense plays right into Allen's basically disguise heavy looks. Washington's offense has the 8th lowest motion rate in the NFL, and the Bears are 5th relatively versus no motion compared to motion this season.
The Pardon My Take Bowl, that'll be a fun one. But whose stock are you going to be selling this week?
I'm selling the Cowboys offense.
Well, Dallas did get faded heavily on game day last week, moving from favorite to dog when it was announced that they would be without 4 starters on the offensive line to go along with the absence of CeeDee Lamb. But they went out and averaged 0.35 EPA per play, and it looks like they're going to be getting back 2 starters on the offensive line for this week.
Yeah, well, that does sound a little bit bullish for the Cowboys, but the reason I'm selling them this week is because they have a bad matchup. Brian Schottenheimer's had a ton of success with play action this season, but Panthers defensive coordinator Ejiro Evero's coverage structures perfectly counter those play action shots. Dallas is the 6th highest play action rate, and Carolina's defense ranks 7th relatively versus play action compared to standard dropbacks. And then I think the Panthers can have some success stopping the Cowboys on the ground. They held the Dolphins to just 14 yards on 13 designed runs last week. And Carolina nose tackle Ashawn Robinson has had a great season, and he'll be going up against backup center Brock Hoffman, who ranks 30th in pass blocking efficiency out of 31 qualifying centers.
All right, well, who else are you going to be selling?
I'm selling Tua this week. I mean, he averaged 5.9 yards per pass play in his first game without Tyreek Hill, but this is going to be a major step up in class going from the Panthers defense to the Chargers defense. And Dolphins backup right tackle Larry Borum is going to struggle across from Tuli Tuilopo, who ranks 8th in pass rushing efficiency.
Yeah, well, LA also bolstered the pass rush this week, trading for edge defender Odafe Owe, who was leading the Ravens with 12 pressures. And then the Chargers sent safety Alohi Gilman back in the trade because safety Elijah Molden is back from his injury.
Yeah, so I don't think the Chargers defense gets worse. I think, they obviously lose Gilman, but Molden's plenty capable to fill that role. So I think that they trading for Owe makes them better. I don't know if that signals that the Khalil Mack injury is worse than everyone expects, but at least for this week, the Chargers defense is going to be better. And I don't think Tua is going to have his same, release valve to Devon Achane, because the Chargers are allowing only a 29% receiving success rate to opposing running backs. That's 5th in the NFL.
All right, well, let's shift over to our next segment here. We've got our DraftKings player of the slate. And who are you putting in your lineups on Sunday?
I'm going to put Hassan Haskins in at $5,000. So the Chargers are down 3 starters on the offensive line. They rank 31st in pass blocking efficiency during the last 2 weeks, and I expect them to not put that depleted offensive line in pure dropback situations too often here. Instead, they'll focus on their ground game versus a Dolphins defense 29th in EPA per rush allowed. Greg Roman specifically punishes overly dynamic fronts like Miami. The more the defense shifts and disguises, the more Roman's motion and QB run game can manipulate the front into overcommitting. I think one of Hassan Haskins or Vidal is going to pop off this week. I'm going to take Hassan Haskins as my DraftKings player of the slate because I feel more confident about him right now.
I love it. Well, let's shift over to our next segment here. We've got the weather of the weekend. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I've got another bet here. I'm going to take the Ravens at plus 7.5 over the Rams. High winds and precipitation in the forecast favors the underdog here because it adds variance and diminishes the passing games.
Well, the Ravens got absolutely killed last week. How did you go about pricing the game for this week?
Houston closes a 2.5-point favorite in Baltimore. The cluster losses on that Ravens defense had high variance when people were trying to quantify it. I think if the market could have a redo on that game last week, the Texans would be favored by about 4 points. We have the Rams 5 points better than the Texans on a neutral. So that implies that the Rams would be 9 points favored over last week's Ravens. However, Baltimore is likely getting back all-pro safety Kyle Hamilton and Pro Bowl left tackle Ronnie Stanley for this game.
Well, the Ravens' backup left tackle, Joe Noteboom, surrendered pressure at a 26% rate against Houston, which was by far the worst clip in the NFL last week. So having Stanley back is going to help them immensely.
And we mentioned this in the last segment, but the Ravens traded for Alohi Gilman and they signed safety CJ Gardner-Johnson, which almost certainly means they're going to move Kyle Hamilton closer to the line of scrimmage. Hamilton ranked 8th in run stops among safeties last year, and he will be a major upgrade in coverage at nickelback because they were starting undrafted rookie Keon Martin there last week. So Hamilton and Stanley are worth 1.5 points combined, according to our numbers. So this makes Rams -7.5 a fair line, but we have a strong technical situation on the Ravens. Teams that lose by 14 points or more while giving up 42 points are historically great bets as underdogs the next week. 160, 119, and 11 against the spread. And then the Ravens also apply to a 153, 87, and 5 situation that plays on teams with a seasons to date spread win percentage below 20%. So nobody wants to bet Baltimore this week, which likely means they're a good bet.
That is very true. We like to go against the grain. But what are you doing about that Browns game? I mean, they're in a horrible travel spot going from, it's going to be the third straight game away from home, and that's including flying to London and back.
Yeah, traditionally playing 3 straight road games is worth about a point. Teams play about a point worse than they would be expected to. But I mean, I can see the situation being amplified given all the time zones they've had to cross. So that's a complete stay away game for me.
All right, well, let's shift over to the injury watch. And the Jaguars offense will be without starting tight end Britton Strange, who has a 67% success rate, second in the NFL.
Yeah, that's a big loss for them. And they're also going to be missing starting center Robert Hainsey, who ranks 3rd in pass blocking efficiency. The backup there is going to struggle because Seattle has the best interior trio in the NFL with Byron Murphy, Leonard Williams, and Jaron Reed, averaging 7.4 combined pressures per game.
Well, looking at Las Vegas, Geno Smith is averaging -0.05 EPA per play, 30th in the NFL. And there's not much room for improvement here because they were going to be without their 2 best players on offense.
Yeah, Colton Miller and Brock Bowers are going to be out again. Stone Forsythe is so much worse than Colton Miller. He's one of the most valuable left tackles in the league. And then Bowers was 4th in yards per route run despite playing through that PCL injury and bone bruise, but they've decided to rest him so it can heal. I think that's the right decision, but it's a big loss for the Raiders offense.
Keeping with that game, the major problem with Tennessee's offense is the backup right tackle, who ranks 56 in pass blocking efficiency out of 59 qualifying tackles, and that's not good when you're going against Pro Bowl edge rusher Max Crosby, but there is a real possibility that starting right tackle J.C. Latham will be back on the field this week.
Yeah, that'd be big for them.
Oh, it'd be huge. But shifting over to the Bengals, it looks like they are planning on starting Joe Flacco after trading for him earlier in the week, but what do you think about that move?
I'm not convinced it's an upgrade. I mean, Jake Browning's averaging -0.14 EPA per play, and I know some of that was in garbage time, but Flacco is averaging -0.29 EPA per play this season. We saw the Browns offense get better with a 3rd-round rookie last week. So, I mean, Flacco's lost all pocket mobility in his older age. It could be disastrous behind Cincinnati's last-ranked offensive line in pass blocking efficiency versus a Green Bay defense with the 6th highest pressure rate. Now, the Bengals do get a little bit of a break because the Packers are going to be without Devontae Wyatt, who's worth 0.4 points by our numbers.
All right, well, before we go, let's do our primetime prop. And last week, you won on Keon Coleman under 36.5 receiving yards. So that puts you at 27 and 21 on podcast props dating back to 2023.
Yeah, and this week I'm going to take Rome Odunze under his receiving yards. So there's high winds and rain in the forecast on Monday in Landover, which will affect the downfield passing game. And Odunze suffers from this the most. I think Ben Johnson will scheme up some of the short passes to DJ Moore, especially because Odunze is likely going to be matched up with Washington cornerback Marshawn Lattimore, who allowed only 1 catch for 6 yards on 41 coverage snaps against those Chargers wide receivers last week. I think he'll lock up Odunze on Monday night.
I love it. Well, that will do it for our Week 6 preview. If you're looking for more content, make sure to head over to drbobsports.com, where you'll find Tanner's NFL analysis as well as Bob's college football write-ups. And we will see you guys next Friday to preview Week 7.